Hello 707. Here's an overview of research design that may help bring more clarity to the chapters in Creswell and Creswell, as well as the research design worksheet, and some of the vocabulary that's used differently across those two things in this class. So the point of this video is to acknowledge some of the differences in terms that Creswell and Creswell use versus the terms that I may use and that the worksheet asks you to work with. The point is that the concepts behind these words are what is important. In research, there is no definitive vocabulary that gets used, so being familiar with the concepts is more important than actually what they are called. For example, I believe in Chapter 6, Creswell and Creswell refer to what the research purpose is as what I would fundamentally call the research design, which is they talk about several sentences that have some of the key elements of a research design in it. In our class, we call this research design the 11 principles or elements of a research design. Again, semantics, but for clarity, I also use the concept of a research purpose as an explicit statement of what your study can realistically do for the scientific community. Now, the reason I think this is important, especially as we're learning, is because we tend to, by default, expect or convey a false sense of what the findings actually can deliver. For example, a qualitative study that is not generalizable should not, in my personal opinion, and probably most scientists' opinion, be used to define policy and practice. 37 interviews should not be necessarily used to create national policy. That doesn't mean that it isn't important research, and the information from that empiricism can be used to inform discussions of policy and practice, but I'm careful not to overstate the importance or the relevance of my findings. Same thing for quantitative. One study should not be the end-all be-all of how we decide the rest of the world's policies should be written. So some humility, some grace, and some simple honesty and straightforwardness in the way you state and talk about your research demonstrates to your reader, your peer reviewer, that you have clarity about the industry of research in general, and you're not trying to be a superhero with one study. Is this an actual piece of the research design? Potentially someone might say no. I, in particular, believe that if we don't make such statements, we leave things open to interpretation, and it's more ethical to make sure that people use our findings for a purpose that we agree is that they are suited for. In a world where there's lots of interpretation and partisan interpretation of journalism and science, I think it's incumbent upon us to make sure we have a statement so that there isn't room necessarily for somebody to misinterpret or misuse or manipulate our findings.